Steve, I got a question for you, because we were talking about this earlier today with the foreign mutual funds.
Oh, foreign mutual funds. That's a trick question, in that the regulations cover in the second year only U.S. mutual funds. Therefore, if you have a foreign mutual fund, it would be covered in 2011 as a corporation. Excuse me?
If they are
a corporation. If they are a corporation, yes.
And then continuing that theme, Patrick, what issues do you see with foreign corporations, foreign issuers in general?
Well, I think overall there's a challenge. Obviously, in non-English speaking countries there's a challenge. Although there are ways around that. Obviously, the biggest challenge is that these companies, these foreign companies, are not mandated or they're not held to our laws to essentially provide these tax opinions on some of these. Now, ADRs, they would, but for foreign securities, there is a challenge in finding that information. Sometimes it is available, sometimes it is not. Again, it takes a high level of analysis and scrutiny to sort of arrive at it. Canadian is a different animal in that the information is available. The analysis of that information can be very, I don't want to say difficult, but there's a high level of analysis that needs to be done because Canadian companies will provide opinions for U.S. tax holders as well as Canadian tax holders. They can differ, and the U.S. opinions sometimes can be pretty complex.
Last question for me, Dan, regarding the confirmation of block relief not used by investors. It's one of the areas where the regs are kind of vague. What's your feeling on what the time basis would be?
Yeah, there's no time period listed in the regs. They talk about it has to be reasonable and in a quote timely manner. There's some case law that talks about what is timely, and although they didn't really decide, one case seemed to say that an annual statement would be timely, but again, the case didn't decide that. I think we've come out sort of that annual probably would be sufficient, but that it should be more frequent if requested by the client. One last thing I'd point out is sort of an obscure point, but the broker has an obligation to provide confirmations, for example, if the client has a specific identification. But there's some very old case law out there that says that's just one safe harbor method. That if the client can still prove that they made the specific ID, the fact that the broker failed to send the confirmation does not void the client's specific identification. But again, that's not something brokers want to plan into. The time frame is unclear, but probably annually, more frequently if requested.
Just a follow-up. So the confirmation of block relief method used doesn't necessarily have to be in the confirm for the trade itself. So,
Correct.
Any questions for any of the panelists?
Yeah, I've got a question. I'm not sure who it's right directed to, but you all talked a little bit about education, and when you start talking about there's many RIAs or small asset managers that are essentially consumers of custodial data that use that data to recalculate cost basis on their own internal platforms. Do you believe that those firms out there, do they really understand the implications of the whole cost basis initiative that's underway, or is this something that's going to be a big surprise to thousands of small firms?
Let's take it.
I think it depends on the RIA. Some of the larger RIAs that deal with institutional clients are very in tune to it. I mean, usually, RIAs are more on top of things. So they've already been asking questions. I think one of the bigger issues with RIAs is they're already calculating the basis. They could be using a very high-powered performance system, and there's a good chance that may contradict the system that you're going to use. That ultimately is going to be calculated in 1099. So what you have to think about is they're going to try to say, use mine. But the problem with that is, it's difficult because you don't have control over it. So one thought is to build some kind of reconciliation process, and it could be daily. So as the transaction goes through, you see that the basis is different, and hopefully add some of an exception basis. you could work it through to say, is my system wrong, or is it the RIA that's wrong, whatever system that they're using? Those are just some ways in how you may be able to satisfy both, is by reconciling it daily, if possible. Then by the time you actually issue the 1099, hopefully you're in agreement as to what the basis is.
And I just want to emphasize one thing, to do the reconciliation, definitely do it daily. That's
Yep.
one of the things we're advocating. Trying to do it year end would be ridiculous. Okay, well, I want to thank you all for joining us. I want to thank the panelists for joining us. And we'll bring Rick in. Thanks.